Good homes. Caballo is the first one in the bathroom every morning. He makes sure that he flushes every toilet, and hums really loud and out of key when he's at the sink. I don't tell my brothers that he splashes water all over me when he washes his face, or that he steps on my drawing book that I lay on the floor next to my head. If I say anything, I'm afraid Gordo will lose his temper and do something crazy, making things worse for us. Alcalino knows what's going on. He gets up early too, and as usual, he has come up with a simple solution. Today we got up and were out of the bathroom before Caballo came in. As we walked past his bunk, Alcalino slipped in and turned off Caballo's alarm, while Gordo lowered the shade and whispered, "Sleep tight, little Romeo." "See, Mommy," Caballo said in a pouty baby voice as he rolled over. When we get to the kitchen, the neon lights are still blinking and Dolores is putting on her apron. "Well, well, look what the dew dropped in," she yells way too loud for our still sleeping ears. "Today you can eat first, and then you'll work harder," she says as she lays out 3 bowls of cereal and pours out glasses of orange juice for us. After breakfast, we work harder, and she notices. When we finish, she hangs up her apron and says, "I'm going to talk to that director. Tell him how hard you work for me. See if he'll give you all regular beds." When Dolores came back, she looked tired. She put on her apron and said, "Boys, that director wants to talk to you right now." When Alcalino asked if he was going to give us our own bunks, she looked away and grumbled, "I'm sure he'll tell you when you get there." Caballo's standing outside the director's office. He smiles at us as we walk in. "Sit down, boys," the director says and swivels his squeaky chair in our direction. A colorful map of the United States behind his head swells and then flattens in the breeze from the fan. I study the unfamiliar, breathing shape, but I can't find an animal or a thing that it resembles. I'm lost until my eyes reach the lower right-hand corner of the map and find the arched back of the green crocodile of Cuba. I find Key West and then hook north, and there is Florida and Miami. Now I feel a little better because I think I know where I am. "I have good news. I found homes for you boys," he says, but just a little too cheerfully. He stands up and pokes at a red dot on the upper left corner of the large map of the United States. "There's room for 2 here in Denver. That's in Colorado." His finger hovers in the middle of the map. Then he squints over his reading glasses. "I think this is it." "What's it say?" Alcalino looks up at the map and reads, "Chicago." The director pulls a piece of paper out of the folder. I recognize the handwriting right away. That's the letter my mother wrote for us to give to the director. "You're Alcalino, the oldest?" the director asks as he scans the letter. "You and your brother, Gordo," he says, peering over his glasses, "will go to the orphanage in Denver. Now the little one," he searches the letter. "Let's see, you are Julian." He pronounces my name wrong. "Julian," I say, trying to correct him, but I don't think he's listening. "My name is Julian," I say again. "Yes, of course," he says, sounding a little annoyed. "You will go to our orphan," he starts, and then he looks at me for a second. "Julian goes to Chicago. It's a nice place. They have room for you there." We're all drawing imaginary straight lines between Denver, Chicago, and Havana. They make sharp, jagged triangles like the pieces of the broken plate. Then Alcalino straightens his glasses and stands up. "We go together." The director shakes his head. "I'm sorry, but you can't. He's too young for the place in Denver, and you're too old for the one in Chicago. Do you understand?" Alcalino turns my head to face the director. "No, él es muy pequeño. He's little, muy little, not go." The director drops the letter on top of a tall stack of folders. "You have to go," he says, and lifts the stack. "I've got kids coming in. Kids have to go out. Believe me, I don't like this part of my job." He slaps the folder down and then tugs on the map. When he lets go, North America rolls itself up into a tidy metal tube. "Señores, unless you have someone who will sponsor you, take responsibility for you, that's the best I can do," he says, and rubs his hands together as if he's washing them. "Sponsor?" Alcalino asks the director. "Yes, someone who will be responsible for you." Suddenly, Alcalino stands up and announces, "Mi tío, uncle, he can sponsor." Tio? Very good. Then this problem is solved. The director picks up his pen. Now, where does your Tio live? In Cuba, Alcalino answers. The director puts down his pen and closes the folder. He cannot sponsor you from Cuba. Pero he's coming soon. When? Now, Alcalino answers with confidence. The director gives him a skeptical look and writes something on the cover of our folder. I will give you time to call, but I must hear from him soon, and I prefer a letter. Understand? Alcalino thanks the director and then pushes Gordo and me out of the office before we can ask any questions. Angelita and Pepe are waiting for us outside. They follow us across the dusty driveway to the pool, and then we sit down and stare into the murky water. Angelita is the first to speak. So where are they sending you? How did you know? Gordo asks. He called you into his office, she says. That means you're on your way out. Alcalino looks out over the swimmers. He wanted to send Gordo and me to Colorado, and Julian to Chicago. Angelita shakes her head. That's not good. The orphanage in Colorado is a cold, sad place, run by mean nuns. One of the boys I met here got sent there, and he writes sometimes. You don't want to go there. How about Chicago, I ask. Angelita looks at me but doesn't answer. I guess we're lucky then, I say. Alcalino told him our Tio is coming, and then he closed the folder. Is he really coming? Angelita asks, hopefully. Alcalino sinks his head between his knees. I don't know. I don't like the sound of that. What do you mean you don't know? You just told the director guy that he's coming. I'm not sure. A long time ago I heard Mommy say that her sister and family might be leaving. Alcalino doesn't sound too sure, and I worry, because I count on him to know what's going on. They're not really leaving, I ask. Relax, Julian. He bought you some time. That was fast thinking. She flashes him an admiring smile. But unfortunately, around here, that's the oldest trick there is. It might buy you a week or two, but then off you go. Alcalino nods. He told us we needed a letter from our uncle. What if he actually gets a letter, Gordo says with a devilish smile on his face. That's the second oldest trick. The handwriting usually gives it away. He's too busy to check every letter, but if it looks suspicious, he'll send someone to check the address. Alcalino stands up. Then we need a typewriter. That'll throw him off. I think it's been done before, but still, if you're lucky, it might buy you another week. Angelita smiles, and it'll cost you. After dinner, we meet on the shed roof to plan. Angelita is pacing along the edge of the tar roof, her hands teasing the leaves. I know the kid who helps out in the office, she says. You've probably seen him in the cafeteria, collecting little cereal boxes. His name is Paco, and he loves Rice Krispies. He'll buy, trade, and even threaten to beat up the smaller kids just to get them. He's hooked, and he can be bribed, she states confidently. We're probably going to need around 6 boxes. Alcalino, you and I are going to write the letter. Gordo, you can make the deal with Paco. You're good at that. Then we'll have to figure out how to get the cereal. Any ideas? We can each save the box that we get for breakfast, and then when we have enough, Pepe suggests. Angelita cuts him off. No good. That would take too long. We need to start this now. What if we ask Dolores for them, I say? No good either. 1 per day, per person. That's all she'll give out. You can't ask for them, Julian, Gordo says. You have to take them. You mean steal them? Pepe asks. If that's what it takes, Gordo answers coolly. But she guards them like gold, I say. And that's why you and Pepe have to do it. She would be suspicious of me. She knows I would never go in there unless I have to. You have to distract her and then grab the Krispies. Gordo makes it sound so easy. It's all set then, Angelita announces. Alcalino, let's go get some paper. She looks at Pepe and me. You should go now. She'll be busy starting dinner. We're counting on you guys. Pepe and I make our way to the back of the kitchen and peer in through the greasy screen door. Inside, Dolores is mixing something in a big tin bucket. You ready, Pepe, I ask. Claro. Why wouldn't I be ready, he says confidently. Pepe is standing next to the door wearing a dirty t-shirt and the same shorts he had on the first day we saw him. But he looks much happier here than he did in Havana. Now that his mother's not here to talk for him, no one can shut him up. It's like he's making up for lost time. He pushes the screen door open and Dolores looks up. Pepe, Julian, what are you all doing here? You're not working today, are you? Dolores checks her work schedule taped to the wall behind her. Oh, I get it. You came to keep old Dolores company. Come on in. I can tell Dolores likes us. She told me the other day that I remind her of her son when he was my age. But when I asked her about him, she didn't answer me. Pepe and I sit down on either side of Dolores and then look inside the tin bucket. ¿Qué es this? Pepe asks and smiles at Dolores. This here's meatloaf a la Dolores, she announces proudly. I look inside at a big pile of pink ground meat that kinda looks like worms. The shiny green rectangles must be the peppers. They love it out there, she crows. They call it la carne de los Dolores. Carne de los Dolores? Pepe laughs and then looks at me, but I shake my head at him. Pepe just might tell her that, in Spanish, la carne de los Dolores means the meat of the pains. I wouldn't want to hurt her feelings. I lean over the unappetizing glob. Is good? Good, she exclaims. Why, John F. Kennedy, the President of the United States, ate my meatloaf and said it was the best he ever had. He did. Dolores gets up. I got this picture right here to prove it, she says, and walks back to her desk. As she turns her back to carefully take the picture off the wall, Pepe winks at me. I slide under the table and then crawl to a large cardboard box by the wall. I open the box, pull out 6 little cartons of Rice Krispies, and stuff them into the back of my t-shirt. I take out 6 more and tuck them into the front of my shirt and pants, and then I crawl back. When she comes back to show us the picture, I'm standing behind Pepe so she can't see my lumps. She wipes the dust off the glass with her apron as I peer over Pepe's shoulder. This here is JFK himself, she says, and points at a man in a suit that looks almost too young to be a president. And that's me, right next to him. He's got his arm around me, see? I was cooking at a fancy hotel in Miami where he came to give a speech. Someone said he liked meatloaf, so I made him my deluxe version that night. They let us open the kitchen door so we could hear his speech. He was talking about how they were going to build a rocket and shoot a man out into space right from Florida. After dinner, he walked into the kitchen and talked to the cooks and the dishwashers just like a regular person. Then he asked who made the meatloaf. When I raised my hand, he came over and put his arm right around me. He said that my meatloaf was the best he had ever tasted, and he promised that the first American astronaut, the first man in space, was going to have one of my meatloaf sandwiches in his lunchbox. They took this picture right when he was promising that he would call me. He said he would not forget. That's why I'm smiling like that. It's not every day a handsome president puts his arm around you and promises he's going to call you. Dolores smiles and I notice there's a tear in her eye. When she turns to put the picture away, Pepe looks at me and nods towards the door. I feel like I want to give Dolores a hug because of the tear, but I can't. So I back out of the swinging kitchen door, feeling greasy like a thief. I let Pepe explain why I had to go. When I walk around to the front, Alcalino and Gordo are waiting for me outside. Did you get them? Gordo asks. I pull the 12 boxes out of my shirt and pants and give them to him. Then we walk around to the shady side of the building. Now I'll go make the deal, Gordo says as he shoves the boxes into the front of his shirt. Are you going to do it right now? It's got to be done today. He doesn't work in the office tomorrow. Alcalino and Angelita are walking toward us as a kid wearing thick black glasses walks out of the dormitory. Alcalino checks his watch and looks at the kid. That must be him, Gordo says. He's right on time. Then he steps out of the shadows. The kid squints into the bright sunlight and starts walking across the red dirt yard to the office. Alcalino slips the letter he and Angelita wrote on behalf of our possibly arriving uncle into Gordo's hand. Keeping his eyes on his prey, Gordo tucks the letter into his pocket, catches up to Paco and taps him on the shoulder. Oye, Paco, ¿cómo estás? Gordo says as if they were long-lost friends. I can see him lifting his shirt to give the kid a glimpse of the cereal boxes. Paco takes the bait. he follows Gordo to the swamp side of the building. A few minutes later, Gordo strolls back around the corner smiling. 6 boxes to start, and then 6 more when he finishes, he boasts. What do we do now, I ask. Wait, Angelita says. We have to wait for Paco to type the letter, then wait to get on the trip to Miami so we can mail the letter. Then we wait for it to come back. That night, right before they turn the lights off, I try to draw a picture of the map on the director's wall, but I didn't have an animal or a thing to remember the shape by. So I draw the humped crocodile of my island, and 3 jagged triangles standing on one point, Havana. I could draw Florida easily, but the 3 triangles remind me of the broken plate, and then I start thinking about my mother. I close my drawing book as fast as I can, and then as I slide it under the mattress, the lights go out. Good night, Aquilino. Good night, Gordo. Every Friday after breakfast, Caballo pins up a list with the names of the kids that will be going to Miami on Saturday. Those kids are given $2 each, crammed into a station wagon, and let loose in Miami for the whole day. They always come back with smiles on their faces and great stories about the huge banana splits they ate and the strange people they met. Angelita says that Caballo is the one that chooses who goes and who doesn't. If you said something he didn't like, or if you didn't give him your dessert from your tray, you could count on not being on that list. In the morning, Marta, one of the older girls, checks the list, then turns around disgusted. This isn't fair, she says in front of everybody. Why do I have to be Caballo's friend to go to Miami? She looks around to see if anyone else agrees with her, but they all look away. No one says a word. When she sees Caballo standing by the wall, she shakes her head and glares at the crowd. Look at you. You're like a flock of scared sheep. Ba, 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 she says, as she pushes into the crowd. That was the first time anyone has objected or said anything about Caballo in public. Our young English teacher is nothing like the one in my school in Havana. She has long blonde hair, smiles all the time, and brings a guitar to class every day. Because her class is overcrowded, she announces that anyone who can already speak English doesn't have to take the class. When Alcalino and Gordo get up to leave, I don't follow them out. I can understand English pretty well, but I can't speak as well as they can, and I like the teacher. I watch Alcalino walk to the other shaded picnic table where Marta is teaching a group of girls how to weave hats out of palm fronds. They're getting really good at it. They can make them big and floppy or small like a baseball cap with a brim. Marta's hats are the most beautiful. They have swans swimming on top. The teacher strums a chord on the guitar to get our attention. Then she tells us about the song she's going to teach us, and then patiently pronounces each word for us. I don't know why she picks these strange songs we've never heard of. It would be easier if we could sing the ones we all know by heart. The songs that we listen to every day on the radio and TV shows in Havana. She plays a song about a guy who wishes he had a hammer. No one seems to understand what the song is about, but we all sing along just to be polite. In the middle of the hammer song, one of the kids starts singing the words to an American song that was playing on the radio in Havana right before we left. Everybody knew it. It went, "She wore an itsy-bitsy teeny-weeny yellow polka dot bikini." He sings in a too-high voice. As we drone on, "If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning." After a couple of verses, the song starts to sound a lot more interesting. "If I had a teeny-weeny yellow polka dot bikini, we'd wear it in the morning." We sing as our teacher plays her guitar and smiles. We make the words match the tune and the song rolls on until we have a huge group singing about a guy with a hammer who wishes he had a teeny-weeny yellow polka dot bikini. Caballo and his friends are standing at the edge of the crowd just watching. Definitely not singing. When the teacher stops playing her guitar, we keep on singing. She tries to get us to stop, but we keep singing. I can tell Caballo doesn't like what's going on. He's pointing at us and talking with his friends. He has a weird look in his eye, angry but afraid at the same time. Suddenly, he and his helpers start running around us, pushing and chasing us, trying to break up our happy singing flock. But there are too many of us and too few of them to keep us apart. When they give up, they trot off to find shade, but we keep singing. As we walk to the baseball field for our afternoon game, I can hear the song mixing in with the splashing and yelling coming from the pool. The girls weaving the hats are singing it best. Marta has organized them into a choir with high and low parts, and now the song sounds like something you would hear in a church. The wind-up. While I wait for my turn at bat, I'm drawing a picture of El Fideo, the noodle. He's up on the pitcher's mound and Pepe at the plate, swinging an oversized bat. The barely human jumble of noodly lines I use for the lanky Fideo look just like the way he moves. I smile because it's the fourth inning, and I can hear people singing. I know why they're still singing. This is the first time we didn't let Caballo push us around. The very first time that we stuck together, and it was us against him. When I look up from my drawing, I see Caballo and 4 older boys walk up behind Pepe. Caballo grabs the top of Pepe's bat, pulls it out of his hands, and then pushes him away. Pepe jumps back in front of Caballo. He stands there with his lower lip sticking out, but Caballo just brushes past him and starts pawing at the dirt around the plate. "Let's see what you got, Fideo," Caballo yells. Pepe stands next to the plate for a few seconds, then he kicks some dirt in Caballo's direction. Caballo doesn't notice. He's pointing the bat at Fideo. "What are you waiting for?" he yells. Fideo holds up the glove and announces, "My arm hurts. Who wants to relieve me?" When nobody volunteers, Gordo starts walking up to the pitcher's mound. Angelita is trying to wave Gordo away. "Alcalino, don't let him pitch." "Why not? He's a good pitcher," Alcalino answers. "You don't understand. That's why he shouldn't pitch," Angelita says and then runs to the mound. I follow her. "Gordo," she says, "maybe you should let me pitch." "No thanks, Angelita. I got this one," Gordo says confidently. Angelita leans in close. "Gordo, why do you think nobody wants to pitch to Caballo? You can't win against Caballo. If you strike him out, you'll make him look bad. Then he'll get you back." Gordo is not listening. "Angelita, this is baseball. It's a game," he says and smiles at her. We all know that to Gordo, baseball is not a game. Gordo plays to win, and he takes it seriously. That's why he's so good. Caballo was still kicking at the dirt and rubbing the red dust on the handle of the bat. "Sit down, Angelita," he yells. "I'm going to teach the shrimp a lesson." Fideo hands Gordo the glove. "I'm not really a pitcher," he says. "I just like to wear the glove." The beat-up pitchers and catchers' mitts are the only gloves in the camp. Gordo watches Caballo doing his batting ritual. Every player has one, usually copied from their favorite major leaguer. A pull on the pant leg, the practice swing, and then the batting face. Caballo crowds the plate and points the bat at Gordo menacingly. "What are you waiting for, ragarm?" "Hey, ragarm, pitcher's got a ragarm," Caballo's friends yell from the sideline. Gordo rears back and then fires a rising fastball high and inside, brushing Caballo back on his heels. "Strike," the catcher calls. "You're blind. That was a ball," Caballo shouts as he swaggers back to the plate. "Hey, wild man, you have to do better than that." Now Caballo's choir is chanting, "Wild man, wild man." Gordo winds up and spins the curveball straight at Caballo's head. He ducks as the pitch breaks over the inside corner of the plate. "Strike 2, the catcher sings. Now Gordo has Caballo in the palm of his hand. I've watched Gordo pitch to hundreds of batters, and I know when he gets the upper hand on a batter, sometimes he'll toy with him, just to show them who's boss. Then he'll strike them out. But I'm hoping that Gordo got Angelita's message. It would be best for all of us if he lets him hit the ball. The cafeteria, pool, and the shaded picnic tables have emptied. The sidelines are packed with hat girls wearing their half-finished creations and kids in wet bathing suits. Everybody in the camp has lined up to cheer or boo as Caballo struts around the home plate, acting as if he's the one in control of the situation. The only ones missing are Dolores and the director. When Angelita runs out to the mound, I follow her out again. "Hey, Shrimp, you got a sore arm too?" Caballo yells. Angelita shakes Gordo's arm. "What's the matter with you?" "What do you mean?" Gordo asks as he sweeps the dirt off the rubber. "You better give him something easy, right down the middle," Angelita hisses at him. I wait for Angelita to step back and then I whisper, "Gordo, remember what happened with the almonds?" Gordo looks at me like he's gonna hit me. Shut up, Julian. That kid was a snitch. He had it coming. I grab his arm. You knew that if they found out you hit him, they would send us all away. You did it anyway, to show him you're the boss, that you're bigger than him. I say it into his face, not caring if he hits me. Gordo pulls his hat down over his eyes. His left hand is knotted into a fist, so I get ready for the punch. But he spins away towards center field. They'll send us away again, I say to him, knowing that he's not going to listen to me. Why should he? He's got Caballo right where he wants him. It's his big chance to get him back, be the hero of the camp. I understand how he feels. When Gordo turns back toward the plate, he's got that crazy, mad bull face, and now I can't talk to him. It's no use. I know Gordo. He's going to strike him out. They're going to send us away, I mumble. Baseball is baseball, I hear him say as I walk back to the bench. On the mound, Gordo is driving his toe into the dirt over and over again, raising a cloud of red dust that drifts towards the plate. The crowd is chanting, "Strike him out! Strike him out!" Every kid in the camp except for Caballo's cronies is singing and chanting, rooting for Gordo. When Gordo starts his windup, he kicks his right leg up high. At the peak of his move, he's like a catapult, all wound up and straining to let go. Then his leg drops, and his arm swings around slow, not very fast as I expected. Then the ball floats out of his hand, nice and slow, right down the middle. When Caballo connects, the bat makes a sweet wood on leather sound, and I don't even have to look. It's gone, Caballo yells as the ball flies high over the fence and then drops deep into the swamp. Home run, he bellows. No one else is cheering. The only sound to be heard is the complaints of the red-winged blackbirds rising out of the swamp where the ball fell. Caballo slams his bat down on the home plate and starts his victory lap. Hey, Ragarm, what do you think about that? He gloats as he crosses second base. When I run out to the mound, Angelita is already there, slapping Gordo on the back. You did the right thing, Gordo. I can't believe it. Gordo gave him a pitch that my grandmother could have hit. He swallowed his pride. He did what was best for all of us. When I see Caballo gloating and strutting out to the mound, I put my hand on Gordo's chest to turn him away, and I can feel his heart pounding like a drum. Hey, Ragarm, Caballo says, and then steps in front of him. Angelita could throw harder than you. Then he turns to Angelita. And why do you hang around with such losers? I stand in front of Gordo expecting him to jump at Caballo, but he just turns his back to him and walks away with Angelita. Gordo is halfway to the dormitory when I call out, Gordo, I know you could have struck him out. We all know. Caballo walks up behind me, grabs my arm and squeezes it real hard. I was hoping he wouldn't hear me. My arm is throbbing, but I keep my mouth shut. I don't want Gordo to hear. He might be able to surprise us all and give up a home run to Caballo, but I know exactly what he would do if Caballo laid a finger on Aquilino or me. Caballo squeezes harder. So you still think he could have struck me out, midget? As I try to twist away, my drawing book flies out of my hand and lands at his feet. Caballo snatches it up and starts flipping through it. Give it back, please. That's my drawing book, I say. Caballo is not interested in the book, but he must have heard something in my voice. I gave it away. Now he knows. These doodles are really important to you, aren't they? He looks at me with a fake sympathetic face. Right? Yes, it's how I remember. It's the only thing I brought from home. I say honestly, thinking that maybe he will understand. Then I accept, he says. Accept what? This prize. My trophy for hitting a home run, he says, and holds it up for his friends to see. I step in front of him and plead, Caballo, give me back my drawings, please. He steps past me and bows humbly to the curious mob that's just starting to gather. They're all looking up at him, trying to figure out what's going on. He looks really happy. I get the feeling that he's really enjoying this. And why not? Isn't everybody gathered around him to cheer for him, the victorious hero? But then someone yells, Give him the book back. Caballo's face drops back to his usual scowl, and he yells back, It's mine now. He's weaving his way through the crowd, heading for the open dormitory door. If he gets inside, he'll lock up my drawing book in his trunk, and I'll never see it again. Angelita runs up beside him and grabs the book. When Caballo pulls it back, Angelita falls. The crowd gasps, and Caballo stops. He's wearing a new face, a face I've never seen on him before. He actually looks like he's sorry for something he did. Caballo stoops to help her up. Sorry, Angelita, I didn't mean to. But before he can finish, Marta, the tall girl that makes the hats, yells, Only bullies hit girls. Bully, bully, Caballo the bully, the crowd chants. Caballo straightens up real slow. He looks tired, as if he's carrying something that he'll never be able to put down. He turns to go, but before he can take his first step toward the door, I hear Angelita yell, Alcalino, no! But it's too late. Alcalino rushes by and drives his head into Caballo's chest. He knocks him into the crowd, and then Gordo flies in right behind him. They tumble to the ground in a grunting jumble of elbows and knees. El Fideo yells, Pile up! In the wink of an eye, there's a knot of bodies writhing on the ground. Kids are jumping in, and the pile is getting bigger and louder by the second. The last ones to jump in are Marta's hat friends. They're sitting on top, wearing their half-finished creations. Dolores rushes out and starts untangling arms and legs, pulling the girls off first. I run around the pile looking for my book, checking each kid before they run away. When Dolores gets down to Alcalino, Gordo, and Caballo, she straightens up and barks, This party's over! Everybody up! Then she pulls them apart and tosses them to the side as if they were red-faced rag dolls and light as a feather. Caballo looks around at the kids who weren't smart enough to leave and growls, You'll all pay for this. Then he limps off to the director's office. As Alcalino pieces his broken glasses back together again, Gordo tugs on his torn t-shirt. I'm still looking around for my book. It's gone, I say as I follow Alcalino and Gordo to the director's office. Innocent Romeo. Caballo is standing next to the director, hands folded, looking almost angelic. The director waves towards the two wooden chairs and Angelita and Pepe sit down. Caballo shoots an angry look at my brother and me. He sees Angelita looking straight at him, and he looks away. Alcalino begins to explain what happened, but the director puts his pen down and raises his hand. I've tried to be patient with you boys. He hurt Angelita, Alcalino says, and squints at Caballo. He can't go around hurting girls. It takes a lot to make Alcalino mad, but when he does, he can be as bad as Gordo. Even worse, because he has a memory like an elephant. It takes a long time for him to forget and then forgive. That's not the way I heard it, the director says. Whatever he said is a lie, Gordo yells. Romeo has no reason to lie to me, the director answers firmly. Paco, his office helper, pokes his head in the door. The call from Denver, he announces as if they've been waiting for it. Alcalino gets up abruptly. Come on, let's get out of here. He's not going to listen to us anyway. We should wait, Angelita whispers, but Gordo and Alcalino are already heading for the door. Then the director puts his hand over the mouthpiece of the phone. Boys, I'll have to do something about this. I can't have troublemakers here, he says before they leave the room. When Angelita gets up, Pepe and I follow, but she stops at the door and turns back to the director. I'll talk to them. They'll listen to me, she says to the director, but he is now busy writing something down on a yellow pad. Caballo steps forward and signals for her to be quiet, then gently turns her toward the door. Maybe I can help, Caballo says softly. Those were the words Angelita thought she heard him say, but she could never imagine those words coming out of his mouth. She was halfway across the yard when she realized that maybe he could be persuaded to help. That night, as we eat our gloomy mashed potatoes and sad grilled cheese sandwiches, Angelita strides into the dining hall and walks up to Caballo. He waves at the empty space next to him as if inviting her to sit. She shakes her head, then leans in to say something to him. He answers and then shrugs his shoulders. As she turns to go, he gently touches her arm, smiling at her, and motions for her to sit down. But Angelita is not moving. Then Caballo's smile disappears, and she leans in closer so no one else will hear. I can't hear what he's saying, but when he finishes, Angelita nods, then spins on her heels and walks away. Alcalino and Gordo slide apart to make room for her, but she walks around to the other side of the table and sits between Pepe and me. What did you say to him? Alcalino asks. Don't you know what's about to happen to you? She snaps at Alcalino and Gordo. We got to talk. We'll meet at the shed. I'll tell you then. As we get up to leave, Caballo is mindlessly shoveling yellow rice into his mouth, his eyes following Angelita out of the dining room. Angelita is sitting in the middle of the shed roof. Pepe is standing at the far end, picking at the leaves of an overhanging branch. Alcalino and Gordo sit on either side of Angelita. I'm standing next to Pepe when Angelita looks up and nods at him. Then Pepe reaches under his shirt and pulls my book out of the waistband of his pants. He drops it on my lap and says, I pulled it out of the pile. Thanks, Pepe. That was a really brave thing to do, I say as I leaf through my drawings. I don't know what I would do if I lost this. I know. That's why I did it, Pepe says, and then sits down next to me. Julian, now you have to do something just as brave, Angelita says. What do you want me to do, Angelita? I can be brave too. Caballo wants your drawing book. Why? I ask. Caballo said if you give it to him, he'll talk to the director, and then maybe he won't send you guys away. What does my book have to do with it? It's called Saving Face. Everybody saw that he had the book, and now he doesn't. He wants you to give it to him at dinner in front of everybody, so they'll all know that he won. I knew it. I should have struck him out, Gordo says. Gordo, you did the right thing, but this is about what happened afterwards. You made Caballo look bad. I thought both of you understood. Caballo always has to win. He's afraid that if he loses just once, somebody else might start thinking that they can challenge him, even bully him around. It's a sad way to be, Angelita says and shakes her head. If he wasn't so mean, I'd feel sorry for him. How could you feel sorry for him, Angelita? Gordo asks. I'll tell you a secret. Caballo is a bully because someone bullied him. He's afraid because somebody somewhere scared him. All bullies are the same. But Angelita, I protest and look to my brothers. It's not fair. Gordo gave him an easy pitch. He let him win. Alcalino takes his glasses off, fiddles with the tape he put on the bridge to hold them together. He carefully puts them on, but they still sit crooked on his nose. If you don't give him the book, they'll probably send us away, Alcalino says. But you'll still have your book, and the other kids will see that someone stood up to him. On the other hand, that might make him even meaner. Alcalino pushes his glasses back up on his nose. But it's your book, your decision. Whatever you decide, we'll go along with it. Right, Gordo? If it were me, I wouldn't give it to him, Gordo says angrily. I wouldn't let him win again. There's only one way to deal with a guy like him. But if he sends you away, we all lose, Angelita reminds him. We might lose, but he won't win again. Tribute. I tried to sleep, tossed and turned, then I gave up. I pulled my drawing book out from under the mattress and leafed through the pages. By the time I got to the drawing of the 3 jagged triangles pointing at Havana, I knew what I had to do. It's going to hurt to give up my book, but it won't hurt half as much as getting separated from my brothers. Even after I made up my mind, I still couldn't sleep, so I stayed up to watch the first rays of sunlight come through the narrow window high up on the wall. The bathroom was glowing its now familiar sickly green when I got dressed and went to the dining hall to wait for Caballo. When I see Caballo cut to the head of the breakfast line, I pull the book out from behind my belt. I take a deep breath and then try to walk slowly and confidently. When I tap Caballo's hairy arm, he looks down at me, and I glance back as if I'm not scared of him. But when Caballo grabs the book, I'm sure he sees my hand is shaking. Caballo turns the book over a couple of times, then he looks at me. Not in a mean way, but like I'm an ant or a strange bug. He puts his hand on the back of my neck, waves the book around, waiting for everybody to look. I want everyone to know that Julian is giving me this special book, my trophy for hitting the longest ball in the history of this camp. Caballo holds up my book for all to see that he won. A few of his followers clap, but most of the kids just sit there with their plastic forks hanging in midair. Then Caballo squeezes my neck, I guess to remind me that he won and I lost. When I walked out of the dining hall, I could still feel Caballo's fingers on my neck. It's kind of a creepy feeling, but I'm sure it will go away, eventually. So far, it seems as if it was worth it. Since I gave him my book, Caballo hasn't bothered anybody. For now, he doesn't seem to be interested in what we're doing, and he hasn't noticed that everybody's whispering about what happened with me and the book. The girls weaving the hats have not stopped arguing about whether or not I should have given up my book. They all agree that Caballo has hit a new high or low, depending how you look at it, on the bully scale. Every time they ask how I feel about giving up my book, I answer the same way. I don't want to talk about it. I just want to forget it. Then I get the same nervous feeling in my stomach. I know that if Caballo hears even a snippet of what they're saying about him, he'll have to do something to show he's boss again. All week, Caballo has been staying at the fringes of things, like he's just one of us. But today, Friday, after dinner, he came forward and tacked up the list for the Saturday morning trip to Miami. Pepe and I worm our way under and around the kids gathered in front of the list. When we get next to the wall, we stand up at the same time and scan the list. Alcalino and Gordo are on the list. We say at exactly the same time, and my stomach starts to hurt. Something is wrong here, I mumble, as we crawl back to where Alcalino, Gordo, and Angelita are standing. Angelita looks at me and asks, "What's the matter, Julian?" "Alcalino and Gordo. They're on the list," I say to Angelita. "What's wrong with that? We gave him what he wanted. Now he's giving us something back. That's the way it works," Angelita says. "Maybe he's not such a bad guy." "Why aren't we all on the list?" I ask as Alcalino and Gordo crowd around me. "I wouldn't worry about it, Julian," Angelita answers, leaning over Alcalino's right shoulder. "A lot of other kids want to go on that trip." I look at Alcalino and notice his ears are turning a bright shade of red. Angelita has draped one arm over his shoulder. Maybe Angelita's right," he barely manages to blubber out. I don't know why, but whenever she gets that close to him, his brain just turns to mush. I turn to Gordo. I can always rely on him for the blunt truth. "What do you think, Gordo?" "What do I think?" he says as he watches Alcalino and Angelita out of the corner of his eye. "I think it's going to be great to get out of this place, even if it's just for a day." Did you say goodbye? It's early Saturday morning and I'm watching a rectangle of sunlight creep up the green tile wall. I'm too nervous to stay in bed, so I roll up my mattress, get dressed, and walk out past the other sleeping campers. The camp station wagon is already parked in front of the dormitory. Its rear gate is open and Caballo's tossing a red blanket into the back. The other kids going on the trip are starting to stumble out the door. They mill around to let Caballo know they're up and head for the cafeteria to get breakfast. I walk back to the bathroom, gently pushing the door open so it won't make any noise. But when I look inside, Alcalino and Gordo are already up, both wearing clean shirts. We stack the 3 blue suitcases one on top of the other so they fit in the closet, and then head for the cafeteria. Caballo and one of his helpers are standing by the door of the dormitory as we walk out. Last night, I tried to tell Alcalino and Gordo about the feeling in my stomach, but they just laughed at me and said that they knew what they were doing. "Make sure you get some breakfast before you go. It's a long day," Caballo says with a strange smile on his face. "He's up to something," I whisper to Alcalino, but he just nods and walks out into the morning sun. He's not too talkative in the morning. Gordo and Alcalino walk into the cafeteria ahead of me. Before I go in, I look back and see Caballo standing alone by the door. When he sees me looking at him, he waves me toward the cafeteria door. "Go have your breakfast," he yells and smiles again. After breakfast, we walk out of the cafeteria and there's Caballo, standing by the back of the car, holding his clipboard. When he sees us, he says something to his helper, who slams the back gate closed. As Gordo slides into the back seat next to Alcalino, he looks at me and shakes his head. "If you could see your face right now," he laughs. "Hey, Alcalino, I know what it is. He's afraid to be without his big brothers." "We'll bring you something back. Don't worry, Julian," Alcalino says right before Gordo closes the door. Caballo signals to the driver, and the station wagon pulls away, a cloud of red dust rising behind it as it picks up speed. When it turns to go through the gate, The cloud shifts and I think I see a familiar blue color peeking out from under the red blanket in the back of the station wagon. Our suitcases are the same shade of blue. I run after them trying to get a better look, but the swirling curtain of dust blocks my view. I keep running until the cloud and the car disappear out by the paved road. As I walk back toward the camp, the gray metal buildings look even stranger than they did the first time I saw them. The distances seem bigger, emptier. I feel like there's nothing keeping the wind from picking me up and blowing me over the chain link fence, along with the red dust. Tomatron. Angelita is waiting in the shade of the building closest to the fence. When she sees us, she calls out, "Hurry up, Julian. We've got things to do." "Don't worry. Alcalino and Gordo will be back by dinner time." I nod and follow Angelita and Pepe out to the fence. "Pepe," she says as Pepe looks around to see if anyone's watching. "Clear," he says. Angelita sweeps away a pile of dried leaves, lifts up the trapdoor covering their tunnel, and points into the garbage can-sized hole. Pepe jumps in first. Then she points at me. "Get in, before anyone sees us." Pepe looks like a big rodent in shorts as he scurries ahead of me in the dark, narrow tunnel. "Where are we going?" I ask. "Shh!" I hear Angelita behind me. Then Pepe stops. He stands up and the light streams in. Angelita whispers, "When you climb out, run as fast as you can into the reeds." We squeeze out of the tunnel. Angelita drops the trapdoor and then carefully covers it with dirt. "Where are we?" I ask. But they're already running ahead of me. As they disappear into a stand of reeds growing in brackish water, Pepe calls back to me, "Watch out for the snakes." "Snakes?" I follow them into the reeds, jumping from one clump of grass to another, holding my arms out for balance just like Pepe. I'm just starting to get the hang of it when I hear Angelita say, "This is where we saw the alligator the other day," and that's when I lose my concentration. I miss the next clump and fall right through the curtain of cattails. When I drag myself out of the reeds, Angelita and Pepe are waiting for me at the edge of a big open field with rows of tomato plants receding into the trees. Angelita leads the way to a cluster of trees where a dark-haired woman is standing by a stack of bushel baskets. She hands us each one, copies its number into a ledger, and nods towards the field. "Row 11, she says as the sound of an engine, sputtering and coughing behind the shed, almost drowns her out. I think of how Bebo could have had that engine running as smooth as silk in no time at all. We walk out into the sun, carrying our baskets past dozens of men and women stooped over the tomato plants. Their broad straw hats hide their faces, but I can see their hands dancing into the vines, gently twisting, pulling, then carefully placing each tomato into their baskets. When we get to row 11, I start picking the delicate fruit, trying to imitate the twist and pull. It looks easier than it is. The pickers are talking about the meals their families will eat, the roof that will be fixed, and the debts they'll pay off with the money they send home. All the while, someone has been singing the same song over and over. $2 a basket, 3 baskets a day, 7 days a week. 7 days a week, $42. Now the midday sun is stinging the back of my neck, and when I stand up, my head starts spinning. I drop down on my knees. "Are you all right?" Pepe asks. I feel lightheaded and hungry. "Yeah, sure. I just dropped one," I say. Angelita helps me up on my feet. "I wanted you to see this, Julian, so that when you start feeling sorry for yourself, you got something to compare your troubles to. These people are here alone, too, but they have to work 7 days a week for $42. That's just enough to live on, but they still send money home. They get tired and lonely, but they just swallow it and keep going. They have to." She looks at me to make sure I get the point and then gets up. "Let's take the baskets in," she says, and we start walking toward the shed. "Before you and your brothers arrived, Pepe and I used to come here a lot. The very first time Pepe saw this, he stopped acting like a spoiled little brat." "I was never a brat," Pepe complains. "That's a matter of opinion," Angelita says and pushes both of us into the shade. "Let's go get our money. I'll buy the sandwiches." The dark-haired woman is now behind the shed, standing next to a 3-sided wooden box that seems to be bouncing on its own. Pepe and Angelita tip their bushels into the box. The woman examines the tomatoes, deftly picking out the bruised ones and then herding the rest through the open side. A rolling conveyor belt made of rubber doormats joined by links of metal wire bounces the chosen ones happily along until they are gently dropped into a shaking frame of wire mesh. They jump like red-faced children on their wire trampoline. Then, one by one, the smaller ones drop through the openings in the wire and roll left on a tin funnel to a basket. The larger ones roll to the right. A tall, skinny guy, just a little older than Alcalino, walks up and stands right next to me. I call it the Tomatron, he announces proudly, as I walk closer to inspect the amazing clicking, squeaking machine. I made the whole thing out of stuff that I found lying around, he says, and beats on the fender of a rusty black truck raised up on cement blocks. I pulled this truck out of a ditch. He leans into the cab to adjust a brick resting on the accelerator. The engine speeds up and the long rubber belt, stitched together out of inner tubes, spins faster around the metal rim of the right rear tire. I bend down to follow the rubber belt spinning under the Tomatron. I can recognize every part. There's a wheel from a baby carriage, chrome racks from a refrigerator, chain and sprocket from a bicycle. Each part had another use, another life, but the way he fit one to the other, they look like they've always belonged together. I wish Beba were here to see this. That's an amazing thing, I say as I straighten up. He pokes his hand in my direction. I am Tomas, inventor mechanic. And I am Julian, artist and I guess now tomato picker. Tomas laughs and pumps my hand. Un hermano cubano? How did you know? We've got Mexicans, Ecuadorians, Guatemalans here. We all speak the same language, but just a little different. It's as if our tongues were bent and shaped by the mountain, river, or sea we grew up next to. When Angelita and Pepe come back, they have 3 sandwiches wrapped in crinkled wax paper. Angelita pats Tomas on the back. Hey, Tomas, are you bragging about your Tomatron again? Angelita, Pepe, Pedro Paneros, good to see you again. Will you join me for lunch? We sit down under a tree with silver roots that look like big snakes slithering in and out of the ground. Tomas reaches under one and pulls out a big yellow purse made of quilted plastic leather. Best lunchbox I've ever had, he says. It's waterproof, keeps things nice and cold. He pulls out a milk bottle filled with a cloudy green liquid with ice cubes clinking in it. This is Tomasade. People say that it's the most refreshing drink in all of Miami. Try it. Tomas fills a dented metal cup and then passes it to me. At first I take a polite sip, but then I gulp the rest. Wow, that's good, I exclaim as I shamelessly hold the empty cup out for a refill. What's in it? Oranges that roll off the big trucks as they leave the groves. The limes come from a little orphan tree down by the river. Then I sweeten it with little packets of sugar that Pirate Angel gives away. But that's just what's in it. What makes it good is the inspiration, Tomas claims as he caps the bottle. If you keep selling your inspiration for a nickel a glass along with these sandwiches, you're going to be a millionaire by next year, Angelita says. I don't care about being a millionaire. I'm just trying to make enough money to fix up my boat. What kind of a boat do you have, I ask. The kind that doesn't float, Pepe snickers. Pepe's right. She doesn't float yet, but she will soon. Where is it, I ask. Down by the river, under the highway, Tomas laughs. Suddenly, the old truck engine sputters. The Tomatron jumps and tomatoes bounce out into the sun. Tomas packs away his lunch and then runs over to the conveyor belt. I walk over to the truck, climb up on the fender, and check out the carburetor. This engine is a little different from the one in our boat, but the parts are all in the same place. So I take out a dime and reach in. I try not to touch any of the hot parts as I feel around for the hidden screw in the back of the carburetor. Here it is, I say. Half a turn clockwise makes it run even rougher, but 1 turn counterclockwise and the engine runs smooth. I fine-tune the carburetor by listening and adjusting the screw a hair this way and a tap that way. How'd you do that? Asked Tomas. I hold up my dime. There's a little screw tucked in there. You can't reach it with a regular screwdriver, I say, trying to sound matter-of-fact about it. I've never gotten it to run that smooth, he says, and then smiles at me. You got a good ear for this. I could use a good engine man on my boat. Just then, the dark-haired lady calls out, Tomas, the little tomatoes, they're bouncing into the wrong bucket. Oops, I gotta go. Nice to meet you, Julian, artist mechanic. Come down to the river, check out my boat. Angelita has a map, and it's not as bad as Pepe says. Tomas slaps him on the back and bows to Angelita. Till the next time we meet. We manage to pick one more bushel basket full, drag it back to the shade, and the lady with the black hair checks her ledger and counts out $6. You can go first on the way back, Pepe offers. When we get to the other end of the tunnel, I push up on the trap door, but it will not budge. Angelita squeezes in beside me. 1, 2, and we both push. The trap door rises just a few inches, then comes down again. Then we hear Caballo's muffled voice. Have a good day at the tomato fields? It's Caballo, Angelita whispers. What does he want, I ask. I don't remember giving anybody permission to dig a tunnel or to leave the camp. The fine for breaking this rule is $3. That's half of what we made. Hand it over before I get mad, Caballo insists. What do we have to pay you, I say. Is that the smart brother? Caballo says in a mocking tone that even all the dirt between us can't soften. You pay me because you broke my rules, Caballo states as if he's tired of repeating it. We're packed in tight, the walls are squeezing in on us, and I can't breathe. I gotta get out, I yell, and then push up against the door with all my might. The trap door rises just enough to let some air in. I hear a sandy scuffling sound as I stick my hand out. Hey! Caballo shouts as he scrambles off the hatch. Then his foot comes down hard on my fingers. Ow! I cry and try to pull my hand back. You're stepping on my hand. It's not my fault. You threw me off balance. My hand hurts. I'm trapped and I can't catch my breath. My head's going to explode, I yell into the dirt. Something is scrambling, scratching around in my chest. It feels like an angry little animal that has been cooped up for a long time, and now it has to get out. I already gave you my book. I'm not paying, I scream into Pepe's ear. I've been angry before, but this feeling is different, and it's bubbling over. I'm going to get you back, Caballo. Shut up, Julian, Angelita says as she digs into her pocket. She pulls out her $2 and then gives it to Pepe. It's not right for them to pay for me, so I wiggle on my side and grab one of my bills with my free hand and then slide it out. Gordo was right, I yell. If you keep giving in, he'll keep on pushing us around. What are you going to do about it? I'm going to tell my brothers. We'll get you back. Angelita punches me on the arm. Shut up, Julian. Tell your brothers? I hear Caballo laugh as his hand scoops up the bills from the dirt. They can't help you now, smart boy, he says as he walks away. Angelita, did you hear what he said? I don't know, Julian. Everything sounds muffled in here. But I do know that you can't fight with him. He makes the rules and he always wins. I gotta find my brothers. I push the trapdoor off and crawl out of the hole. My hand is still throbbing as I run past the ball fields and the pool, and then I see the dusty station wagon parked in front of the director's door. Good, they're back. I hurry through the dormitory, then slam into the bathroom. I knew it. My shirts, pants, and underwear are all scattered over the floor with a big red footprint stamped on each one. My suitcase is lying open on its side. The closet, where we stored our suitcases, is open and empty. Alcalino and Gordo are gone. I should have done something. I should have made them listen to me. I'm walking out of the bathroom, looking down at the tiles when I run into a plaid shirt wall. I look up to see Caballo towering over me. He's too big, too close, and I can't remember a single one of the things I imagined telling him to his face. The best I can do is to squeak. I gave you my book. I gave you my book, he mocks in an even higher, squeakier voice than mine. The new, bubbling anger is rising again. Maybe I can kick him and run away. I try, but my leg feels like it belongs to somebody else. Again, the best I can do is to dig my toe into the ground, sending a cloud of red dirt flying in his direction. Caballo grabs my arm with his baseball mitt-sized hand, squeezes real hard and then growls, Don't you ever try that again. Caballo's free hand is hanging in front of my face. I picture it crushing my head like it was a boiled egg. You're lucky nobody saw that, he says out of the side of his mouth as he looks around. Then he squeezes my arm even harder and pushes me down to the ground. I'm going to let you off easy this time, he says. I can hear him laughing as he walks away. When the fear finally drains out of my legs, I get up and make my way to the shed. I hide out on the roof, drawing on a piece of paper I've been carrying around in my back pocket since I lost my book to Caballo. I draw myself trembling and smaller than I actually am. I'm ashamed of myself for getting so scared, letting him push me around. If Alcalino and Gordo had seen me, I'm sure they would have laughed too. Big snake. It's late, but I'm awake in my new bunk, drawing by the light of the moon. I'm afraid to stop drawing. Every time I put my pencil down, my thoughts get jumbled up. I get sad and angry at the same time. The drawing that I did this afternoon is on the other side of the paper. I didn't want to look at it, but it's whispering through, reminding me. Bebo tried to teach me about being scared. He said it's just like when you make a mistake. You can't dwell on it. The trick is to focus past the scary thing and to pay attention to the next thing. He also told me that some people can smell fear just like dogs can, and if they know you're afraid, it makes it easier for them to push you around. I knew all that stuff before Caballo scared me today, but it didn't help. I have to figure out how Bebo's trick works so I can keep my brain from freezing up. On this side of the page, I draw myself bigger than the ghost of scared me on the other side. I make the rays shooting out of my eyes and Caballo running away. Maybe next time I get scared, I'll be the only one that knows it. The dormitory is much noisier than the bathroom. I hear a boy calling for his mother in his sleep. I put my pencil down and listen to his muffled sobs echo off the metal walls. No matter how big I draw myself, I still feel really small in this big dark room. But I'm not gonna cry. Caballo might hear me. Outside, the clouds part and a beam of moonlight glows on the screen. I climb down from my bunk and stare out beyond the fence into the spooky night. Something black and thick as an inner tube is climbing up the other side of the screen, right in front of me. Then I hear a voice behind me. There are even bigger ones in the swamp. I turn around and there's Angelita. What are you doing here, I ask, as she leans in close to inspect the snake. I couldn't sleep either, she says, and then runs her finger along its yellowy underside. I hope you're not mad at me for giving Caballo the money. I was, I say, and look away. You know, he wants to make you mad, so he can squash you like a bug. I know that, Angelita. You should have given him the money when he asked for it. That's not right. We worked for that money. He took my book and sent Alcalino and Gordo away. Shh, you're gonna wake everybody up. Let's go outside. I follow her past the snoring, mumbling sleepers. Outside, the moon is hanging low over the swamp as if it's caught on the spikes of a chain-link fence. There are things moving in the bushes, probably big animals hunting little ones in the dark. I come out here a lot to think, Angelita says. What do you think about? My old friends, my parents, eating mangoes in the trees. You know, Angelita sighs. Things I shouldn't think about because they make me sad. I sit down next to her and pull out a clump of grass. I have the same problem, but now I have two more people I can't think about. It's terrible that they split you up, but you're not alone here. You still have me and Pepe. I'm worried about Alcalino and Gordo. The other day at the baseball field, they were talking about all the places they can send you. And Fideo kept saying that the very worst one was the one in Denver, the one they sent my brothers to. Fideo said that they have older kids there that make Caballo look like an angel. I wouldn't worry too much about them. Alcalino and Gordo always stick together. You know that. They'll take care of each other. Angelita, we have to tell the director about Caballo. We did already. He thinks he needs Caballo to keep everybody in line. This place is overcrowded, and he doesn't have enough help. He's afraid of losing control again. He doesn't want to hear anything about how Caballo does his job, as long as he gets it done. But he took our money, and my book. He stepped on my hand. We should tell him. Maybe he'll listen. I say, trying to keep my voice down. I don't think he's in the mood to listen to us now, Angelita says and pulls an envelope out of her pocket and drops it on my lap. This look familiar to you? There's a big red X slashed across the address, but I can still read it. I'm holding the fake letter from our uncle. Caballo gave it to me after you ran off. He said he had talked to the director into waiting to send your brothers away, but then this came back in Wednesday's mail. The director checked it out, and when he found out it was a fake, he hit the roof. Caballo said that he was so mad that he bumped 2 other kids off just to put Alquilino and Gordo on the next flight. It was weird. Angelita stops and looks at her hands. What's weird, I ask. I got the feeling that Caballo was actually trying to let me know that he tried. It was weird because I think he was apologizing. He likes you. You're the only person in this whole camp that could actually feel sorry for him. I don't know. I just think he's the saddest, loneliest person in the world. Angelita, he might be lonely and sad, but he's still a mean person. He enjoys scaring people. He even picks on little kids. But there's a reason why, Angelita says. It doesn't matter. He still does it. If the director won't help us, we have to fight back or he'll get worse. I think Gordo was right. Caballo's too big to fight, Angelita says and looks off into the dark. The way I look at it, we have 2 choices. We can either make believe that we don't mind being pushed around, or we can think our way around the problem. Learn how to handle him, she says, and then she strides up to the window. Come here, let me show you something. The snake is now stretched out all the way. Look at him. He likes the heat coming out of the window. Angelita says as she reaches up with her right hand. Caballo's just like that snake. Big and scary looking, but if you know how to handle him right. What are you doing? What are you going to do? I ask, as she grabs the snake behind the head and then pulls him off the screen. The snake wriggles itself into a muscular S shape. Relax, she hisses, as the snake's tongue flickers close to her cheek. Angelita gently runs her left hand up and down its length until the snake hangs limp like a thick cord. Then she walks it toward the fence. Angelita smiles at the snake. Harmless, she hisses again and then tosses it into the tall grass. Angelita, I could never do that. You could if you knew that it was a milk snake. I looked them up in the book. They're not poisonous. She laughs. Caballo is like that big snake. Scary looking, but if you know how to handle him, he's harmless. The moon is drifting over the wild place between the camp and the tomato fields. I can feel it tugging on a little thread of sadness that's been stuck in my throat for weeks. Caballo's asleep, and Angelita's walking a little ahead of me. They'll never see the tears. Dolores Democratic. When I walk into the kitchen the next morning, Dolores is stirring a steaming pot with a spoon the size of a shovel. Hola, Dolores, I say and look inside the pot. ¿Qué es? Grits, straight from the box, Dolores says as she ladles out a bowl of the yellow stuff and then drops a big chunk of butter on top. She pushes it in front of me. My son liked his grits with plenty of butter. Never touched it until it was all melted, she says, and hands me a spoon. You have a son? Dolores nods. Yep. Then she goes back to stirring the bubbling goo. As I wait for the butter to melt, I take out the handkerchief with a broken plate and set it on the table. I've been carrying it around in my pocket since Caballo took my things out of my suitcase. I'm afraid he'll figure out that it's really important to me, and just like my drawing book, he'll take it away from me. Looks like you're going to need some glue for that, Dolores says and shuffles off to her locker. She comes back carrying a cigar box, a little metal glue can, and a screwdriver. She hands me the can and the screwdriver. This here is the glue for your plate. You're going to need the screwdriver to open the can. Then she slides the cigar box in front of me. That there are my son's drawing things. He used to draw all the time, too. Regular artist he was. But then he changed, got interested in other things. Dolores places the palm of her hand gently on the top, as if the thin wood still holds the warmth of her son. Where is he now, I ask. When he got older, I couldn't handle him. I had to send him up north to live with his father. Dolores opens the box and her fingers drift over the colored chalks, crayons, and pencils. I haven't seen him in years, she says, and gently slides it back to me. Take 'em. I seen you drawing in the dirt out there by the garbage cans. You need them more than I do. I carried that box around with me for years. It's time to give it up. I inspect my new treasure. Thank you, Dolores. Don't mention it, Julian, she says, and then leans in close. I heard they sent your brothers away. Dolores rubs my head like my mother used to. It just ain't fair. They should try and keep brothers together. It's Caballo, I mumble, as I sharpen a new yellow pencil. Dolores wipes her hands on her apron and floats to the serving window. That Caballo is a piece of work. Come over here. I want to show you something. She leads me to a little window where the dirty plates come in. From here you can see things, clear, like looking into one of them ant farms. What do you mean? Dolores leans in close again. I've been reading the papers, and it seems to me that Caballo's just like the old dictator that flew away, and the one who took over. Nobody voted them in, and you can't vote them out. That's a dictator for you. But here in America, we don't put up with no dictators. We elect them in, and if we don't like them, we elect them out, and then we send them out to pasture. No ifs, ands, or buts. She points at Caballo. Look at him. He's a dictator, all right. Out in the dining hall, Caballo's sitting at the end of a long table right in front of the fan. He's shoveling large spoonfuls of grits into his mouth. Now ain't that something? You got the same thing here that you left back home. You can't get away from him. Can you do something about Caballo? Can you help us, I ask? What am I going to do, Dolores shrugs. I'm just a cook around here. I can't raise too much dust. I need my job. As Caballo is scraping up the last of his grits, a younger boy walks over and puts his dessert on Caballo's tray. The boy stands in front of the table waiting for Caballo to look up and put him on the right side of his friends and enemies' mental list. You kids have to teach him a lesson. Put him in his place, Dolores grumbles and heads back to the stove. I pick up the screwdriver. Put him in his place. I think I might have a plan, and it calls for a screwdriver. But you gotta do it democratic, like we do it here, she says, and lifts the hot pot off the stove. Dolores walks up behind me, places her warm hand on my shoulder. Butter's melted. Eat your grits before they get cold. I poke the yellow lake of butter into the grits and then taste it. I won't tell Dolores that it tastes like buttered cardboard. What's democratic, I ask. Democratic is when people get together, talk things over, and then decide what's the best for all of them, and not just for some big shot somewhere. It works because everybody's vote counts the same. As Dolores bangs around the kitchen, I push my grits around the plate and think about the Dolores democratic way. It sounds a lot more complicated than my plan. Dolores dumps a large sack of powdered mashed potatoes up onto the table. When she stops to catch her breath, she sees that I haven't touched my grits. She raises her sweaty eyebrow and gives me a look that I don't need to translate. I take a deep breath and shovel the grits into my bulging mouth, as quick as I can swallow. Just as I finish the last spoonful, Dolores bangs a large pot up on the stove. I slip the screwdriver into my pocket, place the glue on top of the cigar box, and then jump off the stool. If I don't carry out my plan now, I might lose my nerve. Thank you, Dolores, I yell, and head for the door. Dolores strikes a match, and poof, whoosh, the hissing gas lights up in a golden ring. Hey, don't forget to return my glue and the screwdriver when you finish. She calls as she adjusts the yellow flame to blue on the tip. Plans and traps. Next morning, after everyone has gone into the cafeteria for breakfast, I sneak over to Caballo's bunk. The mattress of the top bunk rests on a net of springs and wires, attached to the metal frame by wire hoops. I wedge the screwdriver into a metal hoop, then pry it open just a little. I've got it all figured out. Every day I'll open a few hoops until Big Ernesto on the top bunk comes crashing down on top of Caballo. That'll teach him a lesson. I've opened only 4 hoops when the squeal of the door startles me. I frantically search for a place to hide the screwdriver. As I tuck it under the green blanket, I see Angelita walking toward me. Where have you been, I ask. I was looking all over for you yesterday. Angelita sits down at the end of the bunk, but she doesn't look at me. They sent Pepe to a foster home. No. Angelita shrugs. It's a nice family. I went to the house with Pepe yesterday. It's not too far away from here. I can go see him on the weekends. We got lucky. How come you didn't go with him? They only had room for one kid. I'm going to miss him. I'm sorry, Angelita. I'm going to miss Pepe too. He'll be fine. At least he's with a family and not in an orphanage or a group home. Angelita looks up at the underside of Caballo's bunk, then nods her head. I get it. I know what you're doing, she says, and points up at the loose metal loops. I want to help. Angelita, are you sure? I thought you felt sorry for him. I did, but then I thought about what you said and decided, you're right. We can't just let him get away with everything. Great, I say, happy to have a partner. Now, let's get to the cafeteria before Caballo misses us and comes looking for us. We'll meet after breakfast on top of the shed room. After lunch, I climb up to the roof and wait for Angelita. When she finally pops her head over the edge, she's got a little blue notebook with her. She sits down, takes a short pencil out, and opens the notebook. Okay, shoot. Give me your ideas. I think we should start simple, I say as I pace along the edge of the roof. Thumbtacks on his chair, tying his shoelaces together, then we can put sugar under his pillow to give the ants something to snack on. Angelita is smiling as she hands me the notebook. We keep switching back and forth, and the pranks get wilder and more elaborate until the notebook is half full. Then we stop to decide which ones we could actually do without getting caught. Later on that day, we were huddled at the end of a picnic table, going over our list when Marta walked by and asked what we were doing. When Angelita looked at me, I could tell that she was dying to tell her. I nodded. Go ahead. At first, Marta listened very seriously. Then a little smile started to creep across her mouth. By the time we finished reading our list, she was laughing so hard that a big vein popped out on her forehead and wiggled like a little blue snake into her curly black hair. I don't think I had ever seen her laugh. Marta, would you like to help? I asked. But you have to swear that you won't tell anyone else. Marta did promise not to tell, but the next day, Marta brought Ramon, a friend from Havana. Don't worry, Marta said very seriously. We can trust Ramon. Ramon is twig-thin and the fastest kid in the whole camp. Everyone calls him La Bala, the bullet. Yesterday, he squeezed himself into Ernesto's locker and waited for him. When Ernesto opened the locker, Bala jumped out screaming. Ernesto fainted and then got stuck under the bunk. A couple of the big kids chased Bala around the camp for hours. He would let them get fingertip close and then he'd streak off. Finally, he got bored with the chase and just disappeared. He must have crawled into an air vent or a clothes hamper because no one saw him again until he showed up here today with Marta. Even after we had made him swear not to tell anyone what we were doing, he brought in two brothers who had just arrived, Jose and Gustavo. Their father was a chemist in Havana. They say that they can make anything we want to pop, fizz, stick, or smell bad from stuff everybody has under the kitchen sink. After Jose and Gustavo joined us, Marta announced, that's it, no more new kids. It's already hard to meet without Caballo getting suspicious. We meet every morning after breakfast on top of the shed to talk and to decide on the trick for that day. There's no boss or dictator in our group. That means that we listen to everybody's idea and then vote on the ones we like. We're trying to do things democratic, like Dolores says it's done in America. Jose and Angelita even wrote something they call a constitution. Angelita reads it at the beginning of every meeting. It ends with, and most important, our mission is to get rid of El Caballo, the dictator, or make his life as miserable as possible. She says a lot of other things, but that's the only part I listen to. Every day we set a new trap, and then wait for Caballo to fall for it. Every day more kids come to watch him pick ants out of his hair or roll around on the floor moaning and scratching. With each new trick, they linger a little longer and laugh a little louder. Every day they're less afraid that Caballo might see them, but I'm still too scared to look Caballo in the eye and tell him what I think of him. Now that there's something to talk about and look forward to each day, the kids are much happier. Caballo, unfortunately, is not getting any smaller, but he is getting meaner. This morning, Marta suggests that we find another way to deal with Caballo. We're making his life miserable, but he's making our lives miserable too. And mark my words, the kids who are laughing now will be complaining soon. It might be fun, but it's not effective. We have to find a more intelligent and civilized way to deal with him. Gustavo insists that we've gotten too good to quit. while Jose points out that it would be almost impossible to find anything else we could do that is as much fun. I agree with Gustavo and Jose, but I think Marta's way is the smartest. The discussions keep going around and around until we see kids gathering by home plate for the morning game. Time for a compromise, Marta announces. We'll do one more trick while we're studying the problem. Then she stands up with a sly smile on her face, and I have the perfect plan for our last surprise. When Marta takes off her oversized glasses, her eyes look like little raisins. My plan is based on two simple observations I have made about Caballo. Number one, he changes into his good pants right before dinner. Number two, he washes those pants once a week, always on Tuesday, the same day I work in the laundry. We watched her carefully put on her glasses, blinking each eye, making sure the lenses were spotless. Then she described her plan step by step, making it perfectly clear like her glasses. For the last step, she waves a small silver tool, forked like the tip of a snake's tongue, and smiles. My seam splitter and I will do the rest. The Revolution. It's dinner time and I'm standing at the end of the table behind a pound of thick brown gravy, spoon in hand. I can see Gustavo sitting at the first table, folding and unfolding a $10 bill. La Bala, wearing a red handkerchief, cowboy style, is fidgeting next to him. I spot Caballo at the door and lift my spoon. La Bala pulls the handkerchief over his face and slips under the table. Caballo cuts to the head of the line. He slides his tray along, stacking and piling on more food than any two people could eat. When he gets to me, his eyes are glued to the greasy brown lake in front of me. Load on the gravy, he growls without even looking up. Gustavo winks at me as I flood Caballo's plate with the greasy brown stuff. When Caballo slides his tray off the table, Gustavo steps up and accidentally drops the $10 bill right in front of him. Caballo sees the bill, and when he bends over to pick it up, a loud ripping noise shreds through the room. The dining hall is quiet, and everyone's eyes are on Caballo as he straightens up. He reaches for the split middle seam in the back of his pants. He must be feeling a breeze in the wrong place. Then La Bala, with his handkerchief covering his face, Old West bank robber style, flashes by and snatches Caballo's dessert right off his tray. Caballo lunges for him, but stops when he hears the ripping noise again. Gustavo leisurely strolls to the big fan, and then he turns it on. Caballo is standing still as a statue under the American and Cuban flags. The flags and the 4 loose pieces of fabric hanging off his belt are now snapping and waving in the electric breeze. We all stand up and start singing the Cuban national anthem. Caballo, confused, half turns towards the flags, but when he turns back, string beans, chocolate cake, and slippery mashed potatoes start raining down on him. This was not part of our plan, but we join in throwing food and knocking over chairs. We sing the national anthem and the polka dot bikini song at the same time. Caballo looks around at the wild crowd, and then he ducks out the back door. Every bit of fear, anger, and sadness we've been carrying around, the frustration that drove us around the baseball field, the uncertainty we wove into our endless variety of hats, has been cut loose with only one purpose: to turn this cafeteria into a slippery zoo. Angelita and I are dancing on a groaning table like it's New Year's Eve, as if our revolution is over and Caballo the dictator has grabbed all the desserts and flown away. Now I understand why those people in Havana were throwing chairs through the windows and ripping parking meters out of the ground with their bare hands. When Caballo finally comes back with the director, they just stand in the back of the room with their arms crossed. The director isn't yelling or commanding us to stop. I guess he's just letting our springs unwind. It doesn't take long before we're too tired to shout, climb, or sing anymore. Almost all at once, and without a word from the director, we sit down on the sticky benches and wait for him to walk up to the front of the room. In a calm, even tone, the director reminds us that we are here as guests, and that destroying the things that were given to us out of charity and goodwill makes us look like ungrateful wild animals. As he speaks, many hang their heads, but Marta does not. She stands up and in a calm voice says, "We're not ungrateful wild animals, and if you don't listen to our complaints about Caballo, this will not be the last time this happens." The director looks surprised. "Are you threatening me, young lady?" Marta stares back at him, unfazed. There will be no English lessons, he announces. No trip to Miami, no breakfast, lunch, or dinner until everything is cleaned up. Romeo, he yells. Caballo and his gang come back, carrying brooms, mops, and buckets. They made us sweep, wash, and polish all day, until the cafeteria was actually cleaner than it had ever been. Right before dinner, we were sent out with bologna sandwiches, while Caballo and his friends sat down to a hot meal in the clean cafeteria. Caballo Rojo. After our cafeteria revolution, Caballo watched us like a hawk. If he saw more than two people talking, he or one of his helpers would swagger over and break up the discussion. We had to pass notes at the baseball games and communicate with hand signals. While Marta and Angelita tried to think up a more civilized way of getting rid of Caballo, Jose and Gustavo were busy gathering things from the kitchen and the cleaning closets. They would disappear for hours and wouldn't tell me what they were doing. Marta's not going to like this, I said, when they laid out their plan and asked me to help. Neither is Caballo, Gustavo smiled, his face glowing with pride and anticipation. Today is the first Sunday of the month, and everyone is in bathing suits waiting for the station wagon that brings the new arrivals. Lately, Caballo has been welcoming all newcomers with a personal dunking to make sure they know he is the boss. When I see the station wagon turn into the camp, I signal by lifting my hat and running my hand through my hair. Gustavo and Jose are standing by the side door to the kitchen. Gustavo lifts his hat, and then they disappear inside. The station wagon drives into the yard, and we all rush out to greet the new kids. I make sure to reach the doors first, and instead of yanking them open, I lean into them and cover the handles, stalling so that when Caballo gets there, Gustavo and Jose are right behind him. Caballo pulls one of the two newcomers out. We crowd around, pushing real close as he hustles his victim to the pool. With the light touch of experienced pickpockets, Gustavo and Jose stuff Caballo in the newcomer's pockets with the frozen packets of a powerful red dye that Gustavo made. Caballo pushes the new kid in and then jumps in after him, but no one else joins them. We all stand around the pool as Caballo dunks his hapless victim, and we watch for signs that the dye packets are melting. At first, it's just delicate tendrils radiating out of their pockets. But then, as Caballo thrashes about, long red fingers dissolve into rich crimson veils and then turn into a billowing, dangerous-looking cloud. Spellbound like spectators at a fireworks display, we shout and point at the vivid, unexpected color. When Caballo sees the red skirt of dye billowing around him, he leaps out of the pool. His hair, skin, bathing suit, even his toes are all red. We're laughing as he points at us and orders his friends to grab us. But they're all laughing too. Caballo chases us, but we scatter in every direction. Gustavo smiles at the edge of the crowd because the longer Caballo waits to wash the dye off, the longer it will stay on his skin. The next day, Caballo is wearing a long shirt and pants when he comes out to make his announcements. He holds up a piece of paper and reads, "No one will be allowed in the pool until the guilty ones come forward and confess." Gustavo and I ducked into the back of the crowd as he finished. Gustavo nodded proudly at Caballo, whose hair, neck, wrist, and hands are still bright red. Gustavo whispered in my ear, "That dye has staying power." The Democratic Way. Now that we can't swim, we're doomed to roast in the sun. For the last 4 days, a hot and gloomy crowd has been gathering after lunch to watch Caballo splash alone in the cool waters of the pool. There are no trees for shade, and it's as hot as an oven inside the metal buildings. More than once I've heard kids grumbling that the culprits who died Caballo should turn themselves in for the good of all. They never complained before, but this time Caballo took away the one privilege that we could not live without. Angelita and I were helping Dolores in the kitchen when she pulled us aside and said, "All them tricks you've been pulling on Caballo, they're not working. He's still here, and meaner than ever. I hear you can't use the pool now. If there was me, I'd try something else." "What else can we do, Dolores?" Angelita asked. "First off, by now you should know that you don't fight fire with fire. You fight fire with water," Dolores declared. "What do you mean?" Dolores leaned in close and whispered, "Look, I can't be starting no trouble here, but I will tell you this. You're going about it the wrong way. You've got to do it democratic, like we do it here, not like they did it back home. Think about it. What did you get for all that fighting and revolution? A dictator? Angelita said. You gotta get everybody together, write petitions, call your congressman, and then vote that scoundrel out. Do it democratic. What's a petition? I asked. I don't think we have a congressman, Angelita said. You don't know what a petition is? Dolores shook her head and then looked up at the clock. No time to explain now. I gotta get my shopping list for next week's meals to the director before he leaves. She said as she tore off her apron. Go to the library. Dolores was heading out the door when Angelita asked, Are you gonna help us? Dolores shook her head. No, I need this job. If they find out I'm putting ideas in your head, it's goodbye, Dolores. Is that democratic? Angelita asked sarcastically. Dolores looked at Angelita and she pushed open the screen door. It's like I said, Angelita, I need this job. Then she slammed the door shut. Let's go ask Marta, I said. She's always reading. She knows everything. Marta listened closely while we told her exactly what Dolores had said. When we finished, her fingers went back to weaving the palm fronds into her new hat creation, a broad-brimmed campesino hat with a swan on top. Finally, Marta put down the hat. Dolores is right, she said. It's not working. We've been doing things the old way, the way we learned it. But he's better at it than we are. We have to learn a new way, the democratic way. That's what we've been looking for. Marta stood up and paced back and forth behind the bench. There are more of us than there are of them. We have to organize everybody, write a petition and get signatures. We'll find people outside the camp that will listen to us. If they can't help us, then maybe they'll know someone else who can. Who's got a pencil? Marta asked as she dug a piece of paper out of her pocket. I do, I said. Marta slid the paper over. Now we can make a plan. We made a list of all the things that had to be done, put them in order, and put our initials next to the jobs we thought we could do best. We showed the list to Jose, Ramon, and Gustavo so that they could pick their jobs. Finally, we talked about what a petition is and what we wanted it to say. Marta warned us that until we were ready to start, we had to keep our plans a secret. I'm sure that Caballo will find out eventually, but we need time to get the names and then make the calls. If we try to make all these calls from the phone in the director's office, Caballo will find out what we're up to and put a stop to it right away. We'll use the payphone outside the dormitory, she said. When everything was ready, Angelita and Marta started collecting signatures for the petitions and telephone numbers, while Ramon and Jose collected the dimes and nickels we would need for the payphone. My job was to make little drawings to give to the kids who donated the money. Red X. Angelita has been bringing me the paper, mostly airmail stationery, thin as onion skin. I fold it in four and then, using the edge of the picnic table to get it straight, rip it along the folds. I reach for the small stack of the almost square blank pieces by my left hand and draw the first thing that comes to mind. Marta's hats, airplanes, the camp station wagon, Caballo with a beard and a cigar in his mouth. When I finish the drawing, I place it in the pile by my right hand, then reach for another piece of paper. I'm on my last piece of paper when Angelita bursts out of the dormitory. She's walking really fast towards the picnic table, looking back at the door every other step. Put them away, she says, and then points at my drawings. Caballo's coming, and he's mad. That's all I need to hear. I collect all my drawings and then slide them under my legs. I can hear Caballo's footsteps as I start a sun and lollipop tree drawing like I used to do when I was a little kid. Caballo's shadow falls across my smiling sun and then his big hand lands on my box of pastels. They're very soft. If he presses any harder on them, they'll turn to dust. You think you're so smart. You and your little friends, he breathes into my face. His skin is blotchy red. The dye is starting to wear off. I had never looked at Caballo this closely before. The egg we had for breakfast is still wedged in between his teeth and gums, and I never noticed how the little hairs growing in the space between his eyes are trying to make two eyebrows into one. I know everything that goes on here, Caballo says, pointing a pastel green finger back at the camp. He flicks a drop of sweat from the tip of his red nose and leaves a green smudge in between his nostrils. Ever since the pool trick, he's been real jumpy and nervous. He looks as if he's been sleeping with one eye open, probably waiting for the next surprise. I almost feel sorry for him because what Angelita told me about bullies. He can't help himself. He's carrying a heavy bag that he can't put down. He drops a piece of paper on top of my drawing. It's the front page of the petition, and the very first name, the very first signature, is mine. I've known all along. I've been watching you, waiting for the right moment. Where'd you get that? I asked, trying to control my trembling voice. I have friends everywhere, Caballo boasts. Friends who want to help me, not people like you who sneak around behind my back. I can't look up at him, so I stare at my hands. You better start packing. The car will be here tomorrow afternoon to take you and 2 other kids to the airport. When I don't look up, Caballo asks, "Don't you want to know where you're going?" I don't answer, and he picks up my box of pencils and chalks. He turns it over in his hands. "I see you carrying these around with you everywhere you go." He wants me to beg him to put them down. I don't say anything. He drops the box on the ground. As I reach for it, he steps on it. I hear the chalk crunching under his heel. I want to yell and kick him as hard as I can, but I can't, because that's what he wants me to do. He wants me to get mad and do something so that he can squash me like a bug. But the real reason I'm not moving is that he's still too big, and I'm still too scared. My hand is trembling as I grab one of my remaining pastels. He's standing over me, his big fist ready at his sides. I start drawing again, and it seems like an eternity before he turns and then walks away. When he's out of sight, I get down on my knees and sort through the crushed box. Most of the pastels have turned to dust, and almost every pencil has been splintered. I get up and kick the box away. I'm as mad at myself as I am at Caballo. I'm such a coward. Angelita puts her arm over my shoulder. "I'm sorry about your box, Julian. He shouldn't have done that. It's my fault. I shouldn't have let him ever see it. He knows he can do anything he wants to me, and nothing will happen to him. Don't be mad at yourself. I'll find out who's leaving with you, and then we'll know where you're going. Don't bother, Angelita. It doesn't matter. I'm not old enough to go to the orphanage where they sent my brothers." I ground my last crayon into the paper. All the kids my age are going to the other place, and I'm not going there. One of the boys that was sent there had written a letter that was passed around. We all read it. He had gone over the last line so many times with his ballpoint pen that he had worn through the paper. "No matter what, don't let them send you here," it said. "You have to go," Angelita says. "They'll make you." "I don't have to go anywhere I don't want to," I say as loud as I can, not caring who hears me. The instant those words came out of my mouth, I felt a little better. Didn't Marta say that when she got here, there was a kid who took off every time the car came to take him to the airport? "I remember," Angelita says, "and when the car left, he came back." He did that a few times, but they did finally send him away. A plan begins spinning in my head. It's amazing how clear things look when you have no choice, when there's no question that you have to jump, do something. Tomorrow is Saturday. The station wagon is coming in the morning to take Caballo's friends to Miami. Then it will come back for me and the other 2 kids in the afternoon, right? So, Angelita asks, so we have to disappear before the station wagon comes back in the afternoon. And just how are you going to make yourself disappear? We'll get on the morning trip to Miami, that's all, I say, as if I know exactly what I'm going to do. I don't know why, but I feel strangely confident. I might not be as brave and tough as Gordo or smart and strong like Alcalino, but I can invent, make things up as I go along, better than both of them put together. Bebo said so. Angelita is looking at me like I've lost my mind. "Julian, Caballo is in charge of making up the list. You're not going to be on it. Where would you go anyway? You can't just wander around the streets." "Don't worry, I have a plan for getting on the list, and we can go to Tomas's boat. He wants us to come. He said he could use my help with his boat engine. You still have the map, right?" "What do you mean, we?" Angelita asks. "I thought since Pepe is gone, you could come with me. I can't just run away." Why not? I told you already. The family that took Pepe said that they might take me too. And what if they don't? What if they send you away first? Besides, we can always come back. Then, before she could complain, I started on the list of things that we'll need. And don't forget, the map to Tomas's boat. Julian, this is crazy. I don't think you can do it. Angelita, I have to do it.